first published in 1973. This is a study of the force of photographic images which are continually inserted between experience and reality. Sontag develops further the concept of transparency. When anything can be photographed and photography has destroyed the boundaries and definitions of art, a viewer can approach a photograph freely with no expectations of discovering what it means. This collection of 6 lucid and invigorating essays, the most famous being in Plato's cave, make up a deep exploration of how the image has affected society. This was terribly interesting. But I think you needed to know a little more than Sontag explained to understand where she is coming from in all this. The important thing to remember is that Plato wanted to banish the artists, and he wanted to do this for a very good reason. To Plato, the world we live in isn't really the real world. The real world is a world we cannot have access to. The real world is where things never die. Things remain the same and don't change. Change and death, to Plato, are proof that the world we live in isn't the real world. So, Plato saw the world we live in as a world of shadows. That is, one step away from reality. Art was therefore 2 steps away from reality and was therefore a copy of a copy. For Plato, what we needed to do was get closer to reality, not further away from it. Therefore, he needed to banish artists from his ideal society as they move us away from reality towards images, that is, more shadows. So, for as long as we have had idealist philosophy, we have had a problem between images, reality, and how we can go about understanding the differences between the one and the other. This might sound like quite a trivial problem, but it is actually incredibly important. As Margaret Wertheim shows in her The Pearly Gates of Cyberspace, a history of space from Dante to the Internet, how we have understood space has fundamentally changed how we have understood reality. Prior to the Renaissance, space in artworks was depicted not to represent an accurate picture of what people saw, but rather to show relative importance. So, God is huge and the angels are somewhat smaller and the king is smaller still, and the rest of us are tiny. The Renaissance developed perspective painting, and with it helped to create the revolution in science that required a revolution in how we saw space. Not as a frame for morality to be played out within, but as a plane for the unraveling of amoral and disinterested forces. As Sontag says in this work, but the notions of image and reality are complementary. When the notion of reality changes, so does that of the image, and vice versa. Page 125. In many ways, Sontag wants to turn Plato on his head. Plato would have had serious problems with photography. His main problem would have been the seeming accuracy of photographs. As Sontag says, photographs furnish evidence, something we hear about, but doubt, seems proven when we are shown a photograph of it. Page 3. Or perhaps more importantly, photography is the reality. The real object is often experienced as a letdown. Photographs make normative an experience of art that is mediated, second-hand, intense in a different way. Page 115. She plays with this idea of photographs being more real than reality throughout the book. Hard to put this point more pointedly than when she says, ultimately, having an experience becomes identical with taking a photograph of it, and participating in public event comes more and more to be equivalent to looking at it in photographed form. Page 18. And breathtakingly, it is common for people to insist about their experience of a violent event in which they were caught up: a plane crash, a shootout, a terrorist bombing, that it seemed like a movie. Page 126. Photography gets to be evidence because, in the fairy tale of photography, the magic box ensures veracity and banishes error, compensates for inexperience and rewards innocence. Page 41. The problem is that not only can photographs lie, something we still struggle to believe, but they lie on every level. They lie because they are a selective choice of what reality we intend to show. They lie because most photographs are anything but what people think they are, an accurate representation of what is photographed. This point needs a bit of explaining. Think about what happens to you when someone holds a camera up towards you. It is nearly impossible not to pose. But that means that what you get a photograph of isn't really you, but instead an image of you posing in front of a camera. As she points out, that photographs are often praised for their candor. Their honesty indicates that most photographs, of course, are not candid. Page 66. We like to think that photographs explain the world to us and help us to understand it. But again, she is savage in debunking this idea. Photography implies that we know about the world if we accept it as the camera records it. But this is the opposite of understanding, which starts from not accepting the world as it looks. Page 17. To really understand the world involves seeing the world as a process, in action, in time. But a camera, a still camera at least, cannot capture the process of life. The problem is that to understand a thing means understanding how it functions. And functioning takes place in time, and must be explained in time. Only that which narrates can make us understand. Page 18. However, the veracity of images gives them an authenticity that confuses and bewilders us. And this is where the caption comes in. We look at the image and we see time frozen. We see a captured instant in what, to be understood, needs to be a continuum. The context to understand this instant is added often by words, by language, by a caption. The relationship is a difficult one, but one that needs to be acknowledged. This photograph, like any photograph, Goddard and Gorin point out, is physically mute. It talks through the mouth of the text written beneath it. In fact, words do speak louder than pictures. Captions do tend to override the evidence of our eyes, but no caption can permanently restrict or secure a picture's meaning. Page 84. And this brings us to what I think is the main point, and back to Plato again. For Plato, the truth is what we need to spend a lifetime seeking, even if we are sure of only one thing, that we will never find that truth. The Greek word for truth is aletheia. It means to uncover, unconceal. While Plato is seeking to get us to turn away from reality to see the reality beyond the apparent, photography also gets us to turn away from the real world, but as a way to get us to see the real world that is hidden in plain sight. Sontag again. All that photography's program of realism actually implies is the belief that reality is hidden, and being hidden is something to be unveiled. Page 94. A lot of this book concerns the relationship between painting and photography. Painting is clearly an art form, and not just for the snobbish reason that it has a history going back as far as people go back, but also because to paint is to interpret. To paint is to put something of yourself into a painting. But it is very hard for a photographer to be truly original in the way painters can be. And this makes sense of something she points out about paintings and photographs. It makes sense that a painting is signed but a photograph is not, or seems bad taste if it is. Page 104. But also that there is no internal evidence for identifying as the work of a single photographer. Page 105. Painting is also a high art form. She makes the point that art is hard work. Classical modernist painting presupposes highly developed skills of looking, and a familiarity with other art and with certain notions about art history. Page 102. But photography presents itself as realism in the sense that all you need are a pair of eyes to understand what is being shown to you. Of course, this is anything but the case, but we will get to that in a second. Photography isn't so much interested in the beautiful, she says at one point. In photography's early decades, photographs were expected to be idealized images. This is still the aim of most amateur photographers, for whom a beautiful photograph is a photograph of something beautiful, like a woman, a sunset. Page 22. Rather, photography makes the mundane and even the ugly beautiful in the sense that the very act of photographing it gives it an interest and fascination.